Okay, so my battery, in fact, was just about to die, and I was running out of room, so now I'm good, I'm back. Page 4, new section. This is part 2 of Orthodoxy, Heterodoxy, and Identity Reformation through Political Recognition. So, part 2. So, understanding intergenerational social mobilization. So, understand, it's a mouthful. Understanding intergenerational social mobilization. I have, in the last section of the analysis, merely previewed some of the basic underlying concepts needed for reforming, quote-unquote, political identity through the process of recognition. I wrote this specifically for YouTube, and I'm going to post it obviously on Facebook. This isn't necessarily academic, though, I mean, I am an academic, so, I mean, what I do, I guess, is academic. But the idea is it's advanced enough for it to be a little difficult, yet it's not too advanced to marginalize my population, so that it will spawn discussion, and the discussion that I'm trying to spawn, and the discussion that I think we need to be having globally, is the nature of political power. And is it the case that every time we conceptualize political power, because I hear this time and time again, it's always political power as bad, prima facie bad. Political power basically serves no good, it's bad, it's the 1%, it's dictatorial, it's a dictatorship, it's a totalitarian state, it's always bad. And the idea is it really that simple? Have we as social theorists come so far away from reality that the only way we can understand or conceptualize or discuss political power is in terms of its negativity? Is that where we are? Because if that is where we are, then then I'll stop writing professionally, because I'm not going to sort of hop on that bandwagon, right? Because I don't see that as the case, and I don't see that as the case precisely because I'm from a marginalized community, right? I don't think I would have the power that I have without political power, right? So while some people might be spending their lives to deconstruct and destroy political power, I can't say that that's my motivation, right? It's always contingent on the type, the instantiation of power that's important. You can't just generalize across the board and say, oh, all political power is bad, all political power is good. And I'm seeing a lot of that sort of sloppy analysis a little too often. So, to begin again, sorry. I have, in the last section of the analysis, merely previewed some of the basic underlying concepts needed for reforming, reconstructing political identity through a process of recognition. The analysis of recognition, however, was itself contingent on validating the identity of marginalized community members as minorities. There is, moreover, an ability for political power to accommodate individuals within majority communities, not minority communities, majority communities. In the United States of America, it would be white communities. Majority community could be any type of community. It could be white communities, it could be Sunni communities, it could be what have you. It doesn't matter, right? Whatever the majority is. So there is, moreover, an ability for political power to accommodate individuals within majority communities that are increasingly becoming dislocated. Their dislocation not a product of a failure to recognize and validate identity as personal identity, but the failure to satisfy the conditions for their continued employment. The argument, rather generally, again, this is for social media, I'm not going to get super technical and make all the qualifications I normally would. The idea is political identity reformation is itself catalyzed by two levels: identity, recognition, and validation for marginalized communities through empowerment of leaders within the minority communities. Minority as defined however you want to define it. But then the question becomes, well, what of the majority community? What of political identity reformation in acknowledging the identity of majority community, recognizing the fact that we are post-recession, possibly hitting a next recession, if we end up going through, Greece bailout and Spain bailout and, Europe bailout, we recognize that for the majority, the population is defined in terms of and identifies, and this is not to exclude, neither of these are mutually exclusive, meaning that you can have hybridized conjunctive accounts. But generally speaking, I recognize as the hegemon the fact that the dislocation of identity in a majority community is probably going to be based to employment. So let me see what I could do in terms of that. Not to say, again, that that's a sufficient condition. This is just one condition. This is the condition I chose to talk about. So since, however, one often identifies oneself with one's employment, the attempt by those in political power to address the difficulties in attaining employment serves as a potential means of addressing deeper crises of one's social identification. The deeper crisis is, I don't have any work. I, Dr. Jason J. Campbell, am Dr. Jason J. Campbell because I'm here in my office at the university working. If for whatever reason I lose my ability to work, I, in a sense, lose my identity, right? And I think it's very, very important that we, before we even move on, it's important to recognize how important work is, right? Work is the condition not only in which we sustain ourselves by eating and feeding ourselves and, you know, what have you, taking care of the kids and blah, 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 right? And this goes for men and women equally. Work is the means in which we identify ourselves socially. Social identification is undeniably attached and affiliated. It's bound to work. I wouldn't say it's inextricably bound, but social identification is undeniably attached in some sense. In very many senses I could articulate if I was going to really flesh this out, to work. Therefore, if you have unemployment in your community, rampant unemployment in your community, it's not just an economic problem that you have. I'm not an economist. I can't give you the how do you fix the economy, but I can tell you about the social problem, not the psychological. I can talk about the social problem that you would invariably have because you're going to have a dislocated population, majority community population in the United States, white population. You can have a majority community, dislocated population that no longer identifies themselves as laborers, and you can imagine what that does for a dude's ego. It's not a good thing. So, since, however, one often identifies oneself with one's employment, the attempt by those in political power to address difficulties in attaining employment serves as a potential means of addressing deeper crises of one's social identification, since social identification is itself constructed to reinforce class-based demarcations. Social identification is itself constructed to reinforce. Social identification reinforces class-based sort of dialectics, right? On a purely Marxist account, the proletariat is alienated from the means of production and in many cases the actual product of their labor. One begins to conceptualize a recognition of poverty, unemployment, and underemployment by first, right, you recognize the hegemon maintains power, secures power, and does it without appealing to any altruistic, ethical, blah, blah, blah. It acts strictly out of self-interest and self-motivation to satisfy the growing, dislocated majority community underemployment and unemployment. Recognition of poverty, unemployment, and underemployment by first identifying the very real difference in both opportunity and mobility, either quote-unquote upwardly mobile, or downward within the job market. Now that's a bit technical, so I'll explain this. I have a corresponding image that I created just to make this point clear, because it's at that point that's very sort of technically dense. One's social locality, to be located socially upper, middle, lower, quote-unquote. So one's social locality then conditions the perception of possible occupational availabilities. If I am in the lower class, then my ability to conceptualize myself in an office at a university is, the likelihood of that happening is almost non-existent. Which is precisely why, because I came from the low class, because my mom was single with 6 kids, and I'm the eldest of 6, we all have the same biological sperm donor, But because my mom was making, $25,000 a year with 7 of us, and we were the poorest of the poor, I shouldn't have been where I am. But the argument is, I'm here. And the reason that I'm here is in part due to political power. But now we're not talking about me because I'm not part of the majority community. We're talking about, I hate to say the phrase, because, like members in the white community don't like to use the N-word. I don't like to use the word poor white trash because I think it's a very racist, derogatory term. So as a black person, I don't think it's appropriate for black people to say that. So I say that only within the context of the lecture. I'm not saying it to demean anyone because I don't believe in that crap, right? I think it has the same sort of pejorative tendency as the term nigger when used to disgrace or demean someone, not in sort of the colloquial hip-hop sense, but quote-unquote poor white trash. This is poor white trash. Oh, well, you're white, you're a majority community member, but you are socially located within the lower class, sucks for you, right? And no one in political power, I'm not saying that this is true, but no one in political power really cares about your cause. The question is there any validity to that position? And I want to argue it's absolutely justified. That position where someone says, hey, they classify me as, I'm not, right? But I'm fair. I'm trying to be fair despite the fact that I'm not white. I don't think this has to be black and white, right? But I can conceptualize, damn, dude, I'm a poor white dude, and I don't see anybody trying to help me out. Everybody's trying to help somebody else out. Nobody wants to help me out. The question is, am I going crazy? Or is there some legitimacy to my anger? I, despite the fact that I'm not white, want to say that, no, you're not crazy. There is a complete legitimacy to your anger, and I'm going to give it to you, right? I'm going to justify it. Not to say that I condone or endorse the anger, but I am going to justify that anger in the text, right? And this is not just me, this is a collection of many people. So at the very bottom of page 4 then, Lipset and Bendix, within a book, they have a chapter within Peston's 1974 text. This is an old, super old, this text is older than me. Old text, note the following, quote, analysis of class identification. So analysis of class identification, okay, fine. And class consciousness relate to subjective feelings about class position to occupational position, right? There is an undeniable subjective feeling that I have based on the correlation between my class position location and the job opportunities that I have because of that class position location, right? Why is it the case that so many people who come from the upper class find their way being medical doctors, working on the Wall Street market, what have you, and so many people from the, again, poor white trash. I don't mean that, I'm just saying that so that you can contextualize. Poor white trash, oh, you're gonna be a mechanic, you're gonna be a janitor, you're gonna be, and what we do insofar as we say that to the majority community, we being hegemony, power, what we do is we dislocate members of the majority community. In terms of the United States, we're talking about white people, primarily maybe even white guys, right? We dislocate the white guy. We say, hey, white guy, listen, your concerns aren't real concerns, they're not valid concerns, right? You're a white guy, you're the majority, and the white guy has to be thinking to himself, okay, yeah, I am the majority, but then what? Me getting employment isn't of any importance? The fact that I am quote-unquote poor white trash doesn't mean that I can't upwardly mobilize myself. I mean, this was published in 1994. It is 2012, and nothing has changed. Right? I didn't use the case-based analysis that was present in the chapter. I'm talking about the conceptions that the authors, because there's two authors, introduced or discussed in 1974, and we're still using the same language, upward mobilization and such. Now, so I added a little bit of emphasis right after 261 at the top of page 5. They continue. This is a continuation from the same two authors. An important aspect of social mobility in America, or in American society, may be obscured by speaking, by how we talk, by speaking as we have, of all moves from manual to non-manual jobs as upward. You poor white trash, white guys, you guys need to move upward. What does that mean? That means, of course, I don't believe this, right? So in case, unfortunately, someone with no brain got to this point of the lecture, clearly I don't believe this. I'm trying to let you know, I'm trying to legitimize the white dude, middle America, saying, dude, I'm pissed off. And I want to say, no, you're justified in being pissed off. Why? Because this is not my quote. I didn't write this. This is a direct quote. An important aspect of social mobility in American society may be obscured by speaking as we have of all moves from manual labor to non-manual labor as upward, and of the reverse shift, non-manual labor to manual labor, as downward. So here are the terms that we had in 1974, and here's the term that we still have 30 plus years later in 2012. None of this language has been abolished. Yet we spent all this time talking about whether or not it's okay for Gwyneth Paltrow to use the term nigger in reference to the song Niggas in Paris when she was in Paris. So we'll talk about that. And I can imagine being the white guy, you know, middle America, sitting down saying, wow, they're talking about Gwyneth Paltrow's use of the term niggas in Paris on Twitter, and yet we still have these terms. Social ladder. We still have white-collar labor. We still have blue-collar labor. We still say that when you move from blue-collar labor to white-collar labor, you've vertically moved upward in the social ladder. And God forbid you move from white-collar labor to blue-collar labor, from non-manual labor to manual labor, you've moved downward. This is our language. This is our language. How are you to feel if you're the white dude in a majority community who happens to be a blue-collar worker when we all, not they, we all describe your work as the bottom of the barrel? Like, for me to do that would be moving downward. Wow, the last time I checked, work was work. You know, I take pride when I see, and I mean this, I take pride when I see the janitor, you know, sweeping and mopping, black guy or white guy, Hispanic, whatever, Asian, whatever, and I see them, and you know, you might feel a little discomfort and acknowledge them, and they see you like, hey, how's your day? How's it going? Nice to see you. Nice to see you. Excuse me. Like, wow, this dude's really serious about his job, right? This dude's, he has pride in his work, despite the fact that he's a blue-collar worker. Because his work is a manual work, it's worse in the social ladder. This is the language that we are still using from 1974. That's the social discourse that we need to be having, right? Why are we still using this language, right? And rather than talking about that, we're talking about niggers. The use of the term niggers. Let's not get that twisted. We're talking about the use of the term, and Gwyneth Paltrow said niggas in Paris, and people, you know, it's ridiculous. So, I mean, yeah, I mean, white guy, you know, majority community, you are justified in being, upset. Now, granted, don't think that, you know, I know how it is. It's a very prideful, we are all very prideful communities. We're all prideful, especially men. So it's not the case that I'm assuming some burden, right? They use white man's burden. I don't know if it's an educator's burden. My interest in this discourse has absolutely nothing to do with white men at all. I don't care about that. What I care about is logical consistency. And it is inconsistent to put yourself in hegemonized power and make claims about recognition while also dislocating the majority of your population from the way in which they recognize themselves as laborers. I'm not talking about how to fix the economy and get a job. What I am saying is, if the economy is fixed, when the economy is fixed, and jobs are created, blue-collar jobs, white-collar jobs, it doesn't matter. A job is a job, work is work, and as long as you're working, it's good. I don't think anybody in the world is going to deny that fact, right? There is no good and better forms of work. There's just work. There's just work, right? So my argument is to set the record straight right off the bat that this socially constructed demarcation between better types of work is a valuation, that has been attributed to work to make non-manual labor, the type of stuff that I do, which I don't know how it's not manual. All I do is work. You can ask my wife about that, but being a professor, oh, that's white collar, non-manual labor. That's a very high skilled based job, whereas being a mechanic, that's not important until my freaking car breaks down and I can't get to work. I mean, it's an interrelation, and I just want the social discourse to change globally for a recognition that all work is work. All work is good work, right? The more work, the better. Let's take it like that. So, underneath the image then, to disregard the obvious pejorative nature and profound bias reinforced by labeling one's work as either blue collar, which signifies low class or low skill, right? Manual labor, or white collar, which signifies high skill, non-manual labor, coupled, not just that, coupled with the equally degrading notion of social ladder, wherein one climbs upward, that is from manual to non-manual labor, or falls downward, that is from non-manual to manual labor, is to condition a desire within your population for non-manual labor. You want people to desire not working. I am in a position where my job would be, unfortunately, classified as white-collar, non-manual labor, and I work my ass off. All the time I'm working. I don't lift heavy things as part of my job function, but here it is, I'm spending an hour plus creating a video response from an article that I wrote, from a library that I was in for 2 hours, from a dude that I don't even know on Facebook because I have a social obligation to do that. How is that non-manual labor? I don't know. I don't consider myself being, but it creates within the population then a desire not to work. I want to create the antithetical desire, and that is the desire in the population to get to work. And I want to do that not just by saying population get to work. I want to do that by completely dismantling the conceptual mechanisms that legitimize not working. And it's social ladder, upward mobility, downward falling, blue collar, white collar, all of that reinforces mechanisms that we aren't even aware of. We don't even know that we know. Shout out to Zizek, right? We don't even know that we know that we're talking about these things, and I no longer desire to work because my social nomenclature is such that it conditions the way I think. Well, I mean, you know, Dr. Campbell, he doesn't do anything for Jay-Z. He doesn't do nothing. Jay-Z just goes in the booth, he just raps, and that's it, and he makes millions of dollars. Oh my goodness, that dude probably works non-stop. Oprah Winfrey, she doesn't do nothing. She just talks to people all day and she makes money. She's probably up at 4 o'clock in the morning. She probably goes to bed at 4 o'clock in the morning. Who are these people who aren't doing any work? I want to meet these people who aren't doing any work, right? Not to say that there aren't people who aren't doing any work, but this is, this is the idea. Okay, so I need to stick to the script because I lost my position. Blah, blah, blah. That is, i.e., from a non-manual, so unfortunately, I'm going to start with unfortunately, sort of halfway down. Unfortunately, however, it is incorrect to classify white-collar labor as non-manual. The attribution of social value, a construct of those in power, to labor, contaminates the integrity of one's labor. This is old school industrial age discourse. We're in possibly the third industrial age, like we're in cyber future 21st century, globalized world. We got to get rid of the old social ladder, right? The ladder was a good discourse for an industrial time. We're in a www time, and the last time I checked, the web was an even playing field. Everybody got to work on the web, right? The web is level, right? And insofar as we're talking about the web, we're talking about a nexus of interconnection and interdependency. So that there is no blue collar, there is no white collar. The idea that there's a blue collar, the idea that there's a white collar is itself ridiculous. It's antiquated, it's old school, it needs to be done away with, right? So unfortunately, however, it is incorrect to classify white collar as non-manual. They classify my job function as non-manual, And I'm telling you right now, I don't know where that is, because all I seem to be doing 24 hours a day, 7 days a week is work. The attribution of social value, a construct of those in power to labor, contaminates the integrity of one's labor by either overvaluing, in the case of white collar, or undervaluing, in the case of blue collar, one's labor. When conceptualized in addition to the already pre-existing social stratification, those lower class, blue collar, manual laborers have had their labor systematically undervalued and underappreciated. There's been a systematic attempt, and it's not some conspiracy theory boogeyman crap. You guys know I don't care about none of that crap. It is, things unfortunately happen without people's sort of recognition, cognitive recognition that this happens. This is unfortunately one of the negative effects of institutionalized bureaucracy. And what is that? It's that members within majority communities who are at the quote-unquote low social level, right? Low class, I hate it. Poor white trash, I hate it, right? And there's poor white trash at the middle level, right? Unfortunately, I hate these words. You have had your labor systematically undervalued. How has it been undervalued? It hasn't been undervalued by Democrats. That's false. It hasn't been undervalued by Republicans. That's false. It's been undervalued by the very constructs of our language. This is not a Democrat, Republican. You guys know I could give two craps about any of that, right? It's the very constructs of our language as manifest through political power undervalues, systematically undervalues low-class, blue-collar, manual labor. I want to say that all labor is good labor, right? There's going to be variations in what people are willing to pay. I think I should be making more than LeBron James because I feel like I'm making more of a social contribution. But you don't see me throwing a fit that LeBron James is making $100 million. People want to pay $100 million. I don't know that he's making $100 million, but he should be, especially after the game. Shout out to LeBron for an amazing game. But I mean, LeBron's making $100 million. He's making it because people want to pay that, right? I'm not making $100 million. I'm not making $100 million because people don't want to pay that. But the fact is, LeBron's working and I'm working, right? The idea that his work is better than my work is ridiculous. He's doing a different type of work, right? So that we arbitrarily apply all of these, all of this conceptual baggage to just sheer work. And what does it do? It creates a condition in which we are currently, the globe is, in a recession, and there might be potentially jobs that could be created, jobs that could be done, but dude, why do I want to do those jobs? Because those are bad jobs to have, right? That's a low-class job. I don't want that low-class job. I want a high-class job. If I were to tell you the type of stuff, and I did a video, my eschatology video, I showed you the shirt where I graduated summa cum laude, 3.89. I got 1B, undergrad, FIU. I graduated magna cum laude, sorry. I graduated magna cum laude, and I have on a Florida Turnpike shirt, and I'm working at the toll booth for 6 months, having graduated top honors. It's work. I'm getting money. It's a little bit of money, but I can use that money to take care of my family. And I upwardly mobilize myself to become a professor now by hard work. That's really the point, though, right? That really is the point, right? So the idea is, no, you can better yourself, but to say that you are upwardly mobilizing and moving away from manual labor is a categorical lie. Because I'm trying to tell you, when you get here, you're not going to be able to be in this office, in this position, and think you're not going to be working. You're going to work. Because there's infinitely many people who have PhDs that want this position, and I got to be better than they are to keep them out and to keep me in. Right? So, I mean, it's the nature of the beast, right? It's the nature of the beast. Unfortunately, their labor is conceptualized as the lowest form of labor, the worst type of labor, as labor for the unskilled, whereas the upper class, white-collar, non-manual laborers have their labor systematically overvalued and overappreciated. Thus, within the very nature of our descriptions of labor, are disparaging and disenfranchising generalizations and biases which cause people to seek non-manual labor. It would be an interesting research project to track instances of relocation for literal, when I talk about relocation, I mean moving your house, changing your address. Instances of relocation for job seekers based on their social locality and comparing the frequency throughout each level of social strata. Without having conducted this research myself, I would guess that intergenerational occupational mobility increases as one moves down the social ladder and decreases as one moves upward. And basically that means I put money on it. I put money on it without having done any of the research. That generationally speaking, families move with more frequency from apartment to apartment to apartment to apartment, or house to house to house to house, or trailer to trailer to trailer to trailer, as you move down the socioeconomic ladder, and less frequently as you move up. Mom and dad have maybe one house or many houses, and we've been in this house for many years. Think about the relationship between the attempt to try and mobilize a population if that population is perpetually on the go. If that population is perpetually relocating because of habituated intergenerational occupational mobilization. I got to move because I need to get a job. I can't tell you how many people I know that keep moving because they got to find jobs, right? And there is a direct correlation between that phenomena and their social locality. The idea is, dude, why are we undervaluing labor? Like, seriously, hegemony. Like, if you want to stay in power, you better change the game, okay? And I hate to be this frank, but it's like, come on, enough already, right? We need to change the game. All labor is good labor. All labor won't warrant the same amount of money. I'm not saying that, nor should it. I agree with, quote-unquote, the right. With respect to that bit, I do. Conservative, I agree with them on that bit. But it's undeniable that all work is good work. If you're working for a 9-to-5 job, you're working for, you know, the man, whoever, and you get a check, then irrespective of how you get that check, you are contributing to your society, your community. That work is good for your identity as an individual because you have work. You have something with which you identify yourself with. Why would you then want someone to demean what it is you do by labeling the type of work you do as low-class, blue-collar work? That blue-collar, white-collar crap's a rap, right? As a matter of fact, we should start a new social movement where people like me rock blue-collar shirts and people who are working in the mechanic shop start rocking white shirts so you can see the dirt. It's ridiculous. It's completely ridiculous. It's completely ridiculous. It's not a Republican-Democrat thing. It's a sociolinguistic means of dislocating majority community members. So that concludes that bit. Now the formal conclusion. So I lend voice a little bit to the minority community. I lend voice to the majority community. And the idea is that neither are mutually exclusive. You can have members within the majority who are looking for empowerment and social validation of their identity, and you can have individuals from the minority community who are looking for job opportunity and valuation, the cessation of valuation of their job function, right? So absolutely not mutually exclusive. All right, so conclusion. Maintaining existing political power and deterring potential usurpers is, and usurpers is such a great word, usurpers is, in part, contingent on political recognition. The political needs to recognize. Literally, you better recognize. For members of marginalized communities, the recognition of community leaders can validate the importance of social identification of community, where that community is identified as a majority minority, so Black, Hispanic, Asian community. For majority communities, the recognition of the significance of the contribution through labor as always meaningful, your labor is always meaningful, and a renunciation of the social value arbitrarily applied to the type of labor is certainly ground zero in reconstructing pride, individual, community, and national. So that concludes my super brief paper. Shout out to the individual on Facebook for sending me literally maybe a 20-word prompt asking me about the emergence of hegemony. I like smart people. I like nerds, irrespective of those who believe that I'm placating my community by calling my community of nerds. You don't know my community. My community is a community of nerds. And, you know, for me to take my time to do this, to write all of this, to research this, to cite it, to put freaking all these references in properly formatted Chicago format, I don't have to do it. I don't have to do this at all. I'm going to get a paycheck regardless if I do this or not. I do this because I have a social obligation as a professor to do this. So, for those of you who are still in disbelief of the legitimacy of my function in cyberspace or the legitimacy of my community, you are profoundly misinformed. We don't talk about it, we do it. I'm too busy working to be talking. So with that, I'm going to thank you for taking the time to watch my videos. I'm Dr. Jason J. Campbell. Have a good day.